Restrictions apply. Union Bank, your simpler, smarter bank. The Smooth Breakfast presents the headlines, the stories, the news. In-depth analysis on national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Union Bank, your simpler, smarter bank. Smooth 98.1 Love Music, Love Life. I'm Ayo Myro Essay. It is time for today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. This morning, joining me to analyze the news stories, I have Lakunle. Good morning, Lakunle Yusuf.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Nigeria. It's good to be here again this morning.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining us. We would also like for you to join the conversation by heading on to our Twitter, to our YouTube handle, youtube.com/smooth981 FM Lagos, and also on our WhatsApp platform 0809 4440981. That's 0809 444 0981. The headlines this morning are on our platforms as well, on WhatsApp status as well as on our Instagram status. Lakunle, you're writing solo this morning, but of course with the good contributions from our listeners. And this is our first story. Endless borrowing. Experts worry. Okonjo-Iweala, Ahmed differ on Nigeria's debts. Punch newspaper. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, and the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, on Wednesday, differed on the nation's debt to gross domestic product ratio. Ahmed put the debt to GDP ratio at 29%. Okonjo-Iweala said it had risen to 35%. I think beyond, and they both spoke at a high-level event, knowledge event, with the theme "From Debt Resolution to Growth: The Road Ahead for Africa," which held virtually on Wednesday, was hosted by the African Development Bank. I think one of the things I have to mention, or I would like to take a quote from Mrs. Zainab Ahmed, is where she said, "We are cutting costs, we are improving the ease of doing business, trying to leverage private sector resource capacity to invest in infrastructure to reduce government spending." Beyond the fact that she said they want to borrow even more money, I'd like you to take us to the implications of that, but also speak to this statement. Is the government, are they cutting costs? Would you say that they're improving the ease of doing business? Have they leveraged private sector resource capacity to invest in infrastructure so far in order to reduce government spending?
Usually, those are the sweet words that people want to hear about these matters. But what is on ground? Does it look like we're cutting costs, that we're making government smarter? It doesn't appear so. Does it look like ease of doing business is getting better? It doesn't appear so, because you look at the way government wakes up, makes a law or pass a circular that disrupts businesses that are already ongoing, and then you ask yourself, is this how we want to improve ease of doing business, and so on and so forth? So those are the sweet words we want to hear, to say, yes, we're doing this. Somehow, however, in terms of infrastructure, it is not enough, but we can do better. They've done a lot in that regard. But when you look at 200 million people, that the number that everybody quotes that we are, our investment in infrastructure is actually not enough. Everybody says, all economists say to us that when you are in a depression, when you are in a bad state as we are supposed to be, the biggest spender should be the government, and we should spend our way out of whatever the problem really, really is. We are not spending enough in that aspect, which suggests to me then that we're not fiscally as disciplined as we should be. Now, having said that, either it's 29% or 35% GDP to debt ratio. I think that we should all be worried. We shouldn't leave the worry to the financial experts only. I think we should all be worried, our debt profile, that public debt profile, international debt profile is about 33 million naira.
Yeah.
A trillion naira, sorry, which means that if we use the same 200 million people, yeah, it means that every Nigerian as of today is owing about 165,000 naira. So a family of 5, say father, mother, and 3 children, is owing about a little bit below a million naira. So shall we then say that all of us should go and look for 165,000 naira each, give to the government to pay off our debts? That's how it seems when you look at that 165,000 naira. There are many people who can pay
Is that
165,000
per
naira
capita
without,
income? That
yeah.
much?
It is, that's where I'm going to end up that. But
right.
really, how many of us earn 165,000 naira
Right,
a
so,
year?
So for the layman who perhaps is not very versed with economics or with the
numbers,
yes,
like
numbers like that, is it justifiable to keep borrowing for infrastructure projects? As we've seen, and that's why I asked you the question earlier on as to, is the government really saving costs by, have they reduced spending to the extent that we have seen and we're satisfied? We talk about the government being over bloated, we talk about expenses, we talk about so many things. Would you say that they have done enough in this regard?
I don't think we have even done anything in terms of size of government, because our constitution gives room for the size of government we have to subsist. The constitution says, for example, that every state must have a ministerial appointee, which means minimum we have 36 ministers.
Yes.
And that is where you have some ministries that ordinarily should have been a department in another ministry existing.
Right.
So that's a typical example of why we're not even doing enough. Our constitution allows some of these things to also happen. Where we should spend the money, we know them. Why we're not spending it there? Child mortality rate in Nigeria, child and mother mortality rate in Nigeria is one of the highest in Africa. We have the highest number of out of school children in Africa, if not the world.
Yeah, in the world.
Our security right now, we are under policed. So those are the basic things that where the money should go. So if our people, if we're able to keep those numbers down, and in reducing the mortality rates that we're talking about, that means that we'll improve our health system.
All right.
We'll improve our school systems so that people can get the right education to be able to be out there and be useful to the economy in itself.
Right.
But where we are, we're spending money on things that are intangible. At the end of the day, most times you hear this money is being spent, this money is being spent, but we're not seeing the result. Maybe, for example, we'll say that, for example, now it's taking us about 14, 15 years to finish a 120 kilometers road, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. The cost of building that road will continue to increase as long as we don't conclude, we don't finish it on time. Same thing with every other project we're doing. If you budgeted 14 years ago, if you say it was going to cost you 100 million, I'm sure today it will be costing about 14 years after, the cost would have grown to maybe twice, 3 times that initial. So those are the kind of smartness that we need to bring into governance. It's not just enough to say we are building infrastructure. At what cost?
Thank you very much. Yinka says ease of doing business with business. The ones that they disrupted their businesses online. Are you sure Lion and his goons understand the dynamics of this economy? Shanu from Liquid says, please, we all know what to do, but are we really ready to do and adhere to those things? Plug all the leaking holes and trim your costs. All right, let's move on to our next story. Audit queries. Senate will publish list of erring MDAs as ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government that failed to defend queries raised against them by the Auditor General of the Federation. The President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, is talking tough. He stated this following the presentation of the report of the Senate Committee on Public Accounts on the 2015 report of the Auditor General of the Federation. Now, he says that if someone thinks that he's not going to be accountable, then that person has no business remaining in office. Indeed, Chairman of SPAC, Senator Matthew Urogide, said 7 MDAs had refused to appear before the panel to defend the Attorney General's queries against the agencies. This is the kind of attitude and recklessness, if I put it that way, that we exhibit in in certain parts of government. How can an agency refuse to account for monies that that they have spent? Not refuse to come before I spoke about this yesterday, before the Senate committee, and is not able to account for huge chunks of money. It's about plugging holes. Please take us through the story. Definitely. And I think it's not enough for this
Yeah.
Senate president to speak
It's
about.
not enough for the Senate president to just say we'll publish the names. So when you publish the names, what happens after that?
Exactly.
I would expect the Senate president to go further, that after publishing the names, they will pass such heads or such responsible people from the respective of such MDAs to the relevant government agency to further probe and recommend them for trial in a properly constituted court or something. There should be sanctions for such disregard for laid down rules. Now we know that, for example, government says, I give you money at the beginning of the year or whatever part of the year, I give you the money. On the last day of the financial year, any money you've not spent should be returned to the purse of the federal government, to the CRF, the Consolidated Revenue Fund account, I think. So that's one of the places where you see government officials not even living up to that responsibility. A whole lot of them don't return the money. We were here in this country sometime in 2007 or thereabout or so, where a minister was a minister, I think it was Minister of Health that time, asked that such money should be returned. And the Director General, or is it the Permanent Secretary, and a few directors in the place told the minister, no, we don't return the money, we share it. And then when the story broke, unfortunately, it was only the minister, I think Adenike Grange that time. She was the only one that resigned. Nothing happened to the director, nothing happened to the Permanent Secretary. And that is why you have that kind of statement saying they refused to, because they know that nothing is going to happen to them. So except that the people who should punish them, who should prosecute them, are benefiting from such funds.
Yeah.
That's what it suggests, that's why they don't get punished, and that's why they get away with it.
Yeah.
And here we are. We just spoke. The minister just spoke about improving fiscal discipline, but here we are talking about people holding on to money that should be part of that should have been part of that discipline that we're talking about. So it's not just enough to just name them or to just publish. It must be seen that we take it up to the point of prosecution, because that is what it is. That is a financial crime against the state and should be treated as such.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next story. Why we are returning IDPs home despite continued security challenges. And this is according to the Borno State Governor, Babagana Zulum. He says he's sending displaced persons back to the community so that they can farm and help tackle rising food insecurity in the state. He said that over 100,000 refugees from Damasak who fled the farming community in Borno State to Niger Republic have returned home. Is this a good enough reason? The reasons why they fled in the first place, has that been sorted? Please take us to the story.
Babagana Zulum is one of the very few governors in Nigeria today, in my estimation, who's shown some responsible leadership in his states, especially the northern states. And I've said that not because I live there, but from the reports we hear, his name and his activities is always made the news one way or the other. Okay, so one of the primary points of when you say a country is secured is its ability to feed itself. So if we cannot feed ourselves, that's a problem. Now, the notes I made after I read this story was to say that is it that the government is going to guarantee the security of these people when they go back home?
Mentioned here.
They will probably be going back to deserted towns. They will need to rebuild their houses. The story suggested as well that they would provide them with building materials and something to build temporary abodes, and then as time goes by, they will help them to improve their living conditions. Okay, so if that is what it is, then it's a good idea for them to go back home. Or is it that at this point government can no longer sustain keeping them in the refugee camps, and the cost of doing that is probably higher than them returning home, and also that they're able to guarantee their security? Those are the two things that immediately comes to mind as far as this report is concerned. And I just hope that it is that the government is able to some large extent able to guarantee their security, because there's no point returning them home today and then tomorrow the same thing, they have to return to the camps again. Or if it is that it is a matter of cost, which one is cheaper for the government to make? It's a devil alternative. Whichever option they take of the two, something would have to give. It all comes down to government providing security, whichever it, even in the IDPs, in the refugee camps, we hear a lot of non-palatable stories that come out of there. So would I want to stay in that kind of environment, or I'll take my chance going back to my village and take whatever comes my way?
That's really sad though, isn't it? That you are not guaranteed security, such that you'd rather go to the place of trauma than, if that's the option, the final option you mentioned. That would be really sad. All right, let's go on to some comments. Jerry Eruba says, with all the information about bandits and Boko Haram given by Kumi, yet they still are coming to that Kumi story shortly, that they still kidnapped without being apprehended by security agencies. He says, I think this government has no political will to end insecurities in this country. Inca says, I respond anyhow. That's going back to the MDAs that have failed to present themselves. How can units explain how you spent the public funds, or that you start fainting or forming convulsion at a sitting? Yet everyone that sitting has not been locked up. Where is Brigade today? That's a good question. How about the reps that fail to follow up at the minister in the middle of the news? Channel from Ilokoji says, I like your analysis, Lakune. You make a very good position. We know that there won't be any security, we know. All right, let's go on to our next story here. Presidency replies critics, washes hands off media bills. I'm literally trying to do that action that they're washing. I wash my hands off the I do nothing. The presidency has washed its hands off the current attempt by the National Assembly to amend the Nigerian Press Council Act and the National Broadcasting Commission Act, a move media stakeholders and other Nigerians have condemned as an attempt to guard the press. The Nigerian Guild of Editors have responded, and the Nigerian Union of Journalists, and have urged President Muhammad Buhari to call the Minister of Information and Culture, Alhaji Lai Mohammed, to order. Interestingly, after the FEC meeting, at the Federal Executive Council meeting yesterday, Mr. Femi Adesina, who is one of the spokespersons of the president, said the president had nothing to do with the ECC. And they're like, how can you say you have nothing to do with something that your minister, your employee, is pushing? Is it possible? Can you do something outside the knowledge or the agreement of your people or your superior? We've
all been part of one corporate meeting or the other. We know what goes. Here we are. I think, was it 2 weeks ago? One of the aides of the president said that the president is different from the presidency. Now, Mr. Adesina has also expanded that statement to suggest that the president is different from the government, because it said in that report, I said it is a government thing and there is the minister in charge. And like you said, the first question to ask is, do they hold Federal Executive Council meeting? Do the ministers give report? Do you know that most times everybody comes around and say, when they finish those meetings, the most things we hear is the president has approved so amount for so and so. And people ask, is that fake meeting a contract approval or awarding meeting? Is that the only thing they discuss there? Don't ministers give reports? Don't those reports get adopted? If it is adopted, is the president not the presiding officer of that meeting? Does he not know? How many legal luminaries are part of this government, are part of that executive council? Off the top of my head, I can count 7 of them. Don't they have advices, whether it is right or it is wrong? We cannot say that Mr. Femi Adesina cannot convince me that this is not a government. It is a government thing because the man is representing the government of Nigeria. So why did they set up the committee? Is it not the FEC that set up that committee? Was it not the FEC they set up that committee? And you say it is not a government thing? No, Mr. Additional, please should try and respect our intelligence a little bit more.
All right, well, responses from the NUJ President, Mr. Chris Isiguzo, says that he said the media is not afraid of any amendment or regulation, but stakeholders must be allowed to regulate the industry as it's the practice in other climes.
Exactly. You cannot, like the late M. Kabiola would say, you cannot shave a man's head in his absence.
Yeah.
You cannot say that you are regulating. Yes, we agree. I subscribe to the idea that there should be regulation in everything. You can't over-regulate something, and you cannot sit down and make rules without involving the practitioners. Here you are, you go to the National Assembly, you make this provision to the National Assembly.
Mm-hmm.
The National Assembly should allow practitioners in the industry to be a part of whatever it is. There should be honest debates about this thing. Yes, we know that it is important that these things get regulated in this world of fake news that we all hear all over the place. We need some regulation as to that. To that, we need to, and then we need to add proper sanctions to these things as well.
Yeah.
But you cannot stand on your side and say this is what I want and that's what it must be. You must invite these people. Let them be the ones, like Yoruba people would say. Let them be the ones who use their hands to do themselves by saying this is how we want it to be, this is how we want to be.
And say, engage stakeholders.
Exactly. And so when that is done, when it is time to punish for those things, it will be clear that it was a jointly agreed position that the laws came from, and so the sanctions will also come from there as well. So it's important that the government slows down a little bit and engage the practitioners in the industry.
Yeah.
We cannot know more than they do about these things. So we have to give them that benefit of the doubt and allow them to even lead the government in making this regulation. And that's the best way it can work. Today, there are people who still defy the suspension, who use other means to still use this app that we're talking about.
Yeah, in this article, they mentioned that the AGF is interpreting the decision made by the ECOWAS court. Mr. Femi Additional mentioned that they're reviewing it and to see what their response will be. Anyways, let's move on to our other story. So Austin from Satellite says Borno State wants to send back people living in IDP camp back home to farm. Or are they being sent back home to be killed? Let government tackle the insecurity first. Then everything will fall in place. All right, so in that Sheikh Gumi story, allow bandits to guard our forests for peace to reign. Islamic cleric Sheikh Gumi has declared that Nigeria is fighting a tribal war, calling for an amnesty for bandits. Now, this is not, of course, not the first time he's calling for an amnesty for bandits. He said this again, trying to bring an emotional argument for, case for the bandits. And I just want to hear your take on this, on his position, Lakunle. He said this during a TV interview yesterday, and he's saying that, we can compare them to other ethnic groups or ethnic movements and see that they're just agitating for a better livelihood for themselves. And if we can rehabilitate them, that yes, he knows they've killed, yes, he knows they've kidnapped, it's just because they just want some things. Is this the best way to demand for certain things? By killing people, by kidnapping people, by causing chaos and terrorizing the nation? Please take us through the story.
Unfortunately, we're where we are. Let me quote him verbatim from the report. When you say these bandits are committing atrocities, yes, I agree they are committing crimes. They are killing people. They are kidnapping. They are raping. They are doing all sorts of atrocities. But have you for once gone to their own side to see the sorts of atrocities that also been committed against them? Do you know that an ordinary herdsman is lynched many times in Nigeria? Then I'll go further down. It says the Niger Delta example, I think we can take an example from that. When they were vandalizing pipelines and they were giving the pipelines to guide.
Is this the same thing as vandalizing pipelines?
I think it's very unclever of Sheikh Gumi to make that comparison. Even though, even with the Niger Delta issue, many Nigerians, myself inclusive, felt that amnesty as done by the government at that time wasn't a solution, and that we were setting a bad precedent. And that is what is happening now. We can see. So what it means is that I can create trouble in my environment, and the government will beg me, give me money to stop creating trouble. That is what it is.
Yeah.
That is essentially the whole of this story, and that is why Shigumi is using that as a comparison. We have created a bad precedent, and it is going to be difficult not to follow through. Katsina State government said they gave an amnesty. Shigumi this report says that is a political amnesty because there's no package tied to it. That's money.
So it's not even enough.
So it's not even about that. These people are not employed or whatever. Okay, before they started the banditry, what were they doing? So let's look at it from that perspective. We said they've prevented even the honest herdsmen that are not even destroying farms from heading their cattle. They prevented farmers from going to their farms. Now the whole country is staggering under the threats of food insecurity.
Yeah.
They've prevented innocent people like you and I from using our roads for travels, preventing some people of their means of life. Of course, if the drivers cannot, the public transporters cannot transport people, that means they can't feed. Schools are being closed, so that means that it is now, for example, by now, GS3 students nationwide should have concluded their BK, that's basic education certificate in education.
Yeah.
As far back as April. This is June. We don't even know when the exam is going to hold because the federal government and the Federal Ministry of Education is saying everywhere must wait for those who are behind. And the earliest they can do that is August. So you see that the chain is long of what this is. So what Gumi is suggesting here is to say, if you give them money, they will stop. Simple. And he's used the Niger Delta because at the end of the day, when those guys were truly vandalizing the pipelines and kidnapping foreigners, we gave them money and they stopped.
Can you compare though? Or is it that just that, okay, so it was bad before, now let's make it worse so we can even get amnesty? Are you saying
exactly that's what it is right now? So whatever it is that we need, like I've always maintained, what do we have to do? What must we do to stop this?
Yes.
Do we want to give them money so that they will stop?
Is that a solution?
I'm being realistic here. Whether it's a solution or not, do we want to give them money so that they will stop? Do we want to use force? Do we want to beg them? Whatever it is that we want to do, what is it exactly that the government wants? Because it doesn't look like government wants to do anything right now. Because that's why it's subsisting.
But they've given amnesty to a few people.
But you just heard him say in the report that it is political amnesty.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying. So let's assume that they give them the political amnesty, then add a package to them. So if they ask for more things, you want them to vandalize and kill more people if they're not satisfied?
That is where the problem really is. Because these people are never going to stop. Because now, the thing is never going to stop. Because now, if you give this one money, give or take, exactly, another group will come somewhere else in the country and start his own trouble.
Because we have to move on because of our time. Yeah. Because the presidency, I don't know if it's the president or presidency.
They are different.
Said that exactly that they're going to speak to IPOB in the language that they understand. And we are now talking about, let us perhaps explore if it's amnesty we're giving them, let's give them amnesty. So how do we measure who we want to speak to in the language they understand and who we want to give amnesty to? Because what's going to stop another group from arising, from saying that, because they're not well treated? Who is living a life that they're enjoying in Nigeria?
When you have not caused enough trouble, they will speak to you in the language that you understand. But when you have caused enough trouble, they will offer you amnesty. That is what is on ground right now. That's what it suggests. We see where we are. When last did you go to the market? For example, okay, let me say for example now, okay, Idil Kabir is in another 30 days. Yeah. By now we should be seeing ramps all over the place. Have you seen anywhere around Lagos that the people from the north have brought for sale for that festival?
All right, let's take some comments. We're out of time. We need to take, and I look forward to having this conversation in detail at 9 o'clock during Lagos Talks 981. Modipa says, of course, it's not a solution. What are we even discussing? Amnesty means an official pardon for your crimes, not a reward for your crimes. These people should be prosecuted for their crimes. We're talking about giving them money. Please, please, please. And then Prince says, is the Minister of Information sponsoring another media bill at National Assembly? Because the current media bill is sponsored by Honorable Odebumi Olusegun, PDP rep from Oyo State. And I think this was what Femi Adesina was responding to from the video I watched. Yes, Prince, he did say that. However, the responders, and that includes the NUJ and the NGE, said that the minister was in support. Hence the reason why they're asking the president to wade in. Chikangina from Marina says the analogy of your guest comparing the agitation of bandits and the struggle of Niger Delta militants is laughable. If I may ask, what are the bandits fighting for? Well, in this article, they say they are fighting for a better life, that they want better welfare, that they don't feel like they are being treated well. So
let me also remind the person that sent that we're actually reacting to the report. That's what is in the report, not my opinion.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's clarify that, because people think that you're agitating for amnesty.
No, I'm not.
Jennifer says the government needs to give all Nigerians amnesty. We are all traumatized. And I think on that note, we're going to end the show today. A big thanks to Lakunle. Thanks for your contributions. As always, your analysis on today's stories. We couldn't go through all of them. However, during Lagos Stocks 981, we will take all the stories and get your thoughts and reactions. If you have something to say about any of the stories, then please wait until 9. By the way, we have some great news, and that is that from next week, the 1st of July, things are switching up here on the Smooth Breakfast Show. First off, good news, Valentine and I will be back fully on air together. So we're going to have two of us back on air in over 1 year, so we're excited about that. And very importantly, we're going to be changing some parts of our programming. Chief of that is that Lagos Talks 981 is now going to be immediately after Freshly Pressed. So this means that we have a longer time to analyze the news stories with your input. So following the analysis from our experts from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, from 8:10 to 8:50, we open the phone lines and get your thoughts. So we have a much longer time to dedicate to our listeners' opinions. We see that we often cannot take all of them, and we want to give room for that so that we really hear your thoughts. And then Locker Room and the Grapevine 981 will continue at 9 o'clock, 9 to 9:30. So you won't miss any of your favorite programs, only that we're trying to rejig it to make it better for you. Thank you so very much. In a few minutes, we'll bring you today's edition of the Grapevine 981. Oris will be joining me then. Stay tuned.
Union Bank, your simpler, smarter bank.
Thank you.